Hey guys, Toby Mathis here, and for the past 3 decades, I've been working in the field of tax and asset protection. And what is becoming abundantly clear, and it's been this way for decades really, is that every person in the United States really could benefit from using a living trust. Now, the rich are using it, and I'm going to go over 4 surprising reasons that they're using it and why you should too. But it really comes down to understanding what they are and why they are so important for just about everybody nowadays. And so I'm just going to break it down into bite-sized pieces, and I'm going to go over those 4 surprising reasons. But let me give you the 10,000-foot view. First off, all of us are walking around and we're considered estates if something happens to us and we pass away, right? We have an estate. I don't care whether you have $10, you still have an estate. You have your body during your lifetime. You have medical things that might happen. You have financial things that might happen. And if you're incapacitated or anything, somebody's going to have to step in, or the state's going to appoint somebody, right? If we pass away, somebody's going to have to step in, or again, the state will handle it. And what we want to do is put it into writing to make sure that our directions are known. And it really comes down to giving us 2 choices when it comes to putting in writing. Now, the third choice is called intestate. And if you remember Prince, that's what happened with him. He didn't have any plan, so the state imposed its plan on his estate. We don't want that. So the ones that we care about are the 2 that are in writing. One is effective when you pass away only, and it gives you no benefit during your lifetime, and it requires that you go to court. That's called a will, and the action that it requires is probate. Number 2 is private, does not require probate. You handle things privately. You tell me which one sounds better, right? The one that's a public record, requires lawyers, requires disputes to be handled in front of a judge, all that stuff going on. The one that doesn't help me during my lifetime, but it's only there when I die. Or do you want the one that's there during your lifetime, that helps you, keeps your affairs private, minimizes disputes, and eliminates the need to going through that probate process, which, by the way, depending on which study you look at, is between 3 and 18% of every estate, and on average about 18 months. So it depends on how big your estate is and which state you're in. Some states, like California, for example, have statutory probate fees for both the lawyers and the personal representative. We want to get away from those. Those, by the way, start at 8%. It's like, ouch. Let's get away from that. Let's keep it private. Let's keep it less costly, and let's make it work for us. And that's what a living trust does. Now, a living trust is more than just when you pass. It also is effective for if I am incapacitated for any reason, if I need somebody to advocate for me medically. It could include your HIPAA release as well. There's the medical power of attorney, advance directives. It could be a living will, end of life decisions. It could even have a pour over will to make sure that all of your assets, even if you forget to fund the trust, still pour into that trust. But what it really is a comprehensive tool to make sure that your wishes are known and we can avoid needing to go into a court proceeding. The way I want you to think of living trust is it is your roll-on bag that you're carrying with you during your lifetime, and all of your things are inside that roll-on bag. For example, if you have LLCs that hold real estate, they're inside the roll-on bag. If you have a corporation, it's inside the roll-on bag. Your personal checking account, it's inside the roll-on bag. Your house, inside the bag. All of your assets, inside the bag. And if I can no longer pull it, because if I'm incapacitated, it says, here's who steps in and picks that up and starts carrying it along for me. And if I pass away, then it says, here's how the things that are in that roll-on bag are distributed. That's it in a nutshell. It is that simple. It's a comprehensive tool that helps you. Now, what are the 4 reasons that the wealthy use it? Well, that's really where I wanted to come on in and dive in. The number 1 reason that might surprise you is probate. And it's not what you think. It's the reason they want to avoid probate is because they don't want disputes in their family that are going to deplete that sizable estate that they're passing on. So when the wealthy have accumulated their funds and they're thinking about their children, or organizations that they care about, they have to think about, well, what do I like? Am I going to be inviting a dispute? Let me give you a recipe for disaster, right? If you ever want to see a family just tear itself to shreds, this is what happens. Mom and dad passes away before mom. Mom is older. One of the siblings goes and takes care of mom. Mom says, because this sibling's been helping me so much, I'm going to leave that sibling a little bit extra. Then when mom passes away, the other siblings think it's unfair. They have guilt and they sue and they say, you did undue influence on mom and you were contriving to try to steal the estate. And now we're off to the races and you have a big litigation battle. The rich know to avoid that. And they put teeth into their documents. And when I say teeth, it means if you contest this, you're disinherited. Quite often, they want to make sure that they are controlling things from the grave, and they put in other provisions. But at its core, they want to avoid that court action called probate. Number two, by avoiding that probate, they're achieving a second directive, which is really important, which is privacy. When you are going through probate, it is a public record. Everything that you own becomes known. It's published. Anybody can pull it up. Anybody can look and see, oh, what's in this estate? That's how we know how many famous people, what they had, and who received it. That's why when I use Prince as an example, we know exactly what went through it because it's a public forum. You can see exactly what he has in his estate and who's making a claim against it. You can read the pleadings because it is a public document. When you are using a living trust, you are no longer in that public forum. You are private. Nobody knows what you have. Nobody needs to know what you have. Your family's affairs are completely private, and whatever was in your estate, nobody needs to know. That's private. And the wealthy know this, and the rich use living trusts to get that privacy protection to keep their financial affairs private because they know that there are folks out there that will target people simply because they have assets, and they want to make sure that they're not putting themselves on that radar. Number three, and this might surprise you, the wealthy understand that one of the worst things you could do to somebody is give them money when they're not capable of handling it. And so they desire control and flexibility to make sure that doesn't happen. And let me give you some examples. There have been a number of studies. One that came out of the Ohio State University showed that of windfalls, whether it be from lottery winnings, could be from an inheritance that hits you, you save about 16 cents on the dollar. That's about what they get. And the individuals who get that windfall dramatically increase their chances of going bankrupt within 4 to 5 years. In other words, we've worsened that person's condition by giving them something that they weren't capable of handling. And the rich understand this, and so they put things in trust with safety rails. Quite often, it might be they use something called HEM standards, which is health, education, maintenance, and support. Hey, you'll have money if you need it, but you can't just sell my assets and buy a Lamborghini, right? But if you need transportation, there's money to help. If you have health issues, there's money to help. If you have somebody that needs to go to school, there's money there to help. But you can't just go take it, sell it all, spend it all, and go hog wild. No, we are going to control it. Or you put in conditions like when you graduate college, you get this percentage. Or if you hit this age, when you're 35, you can take 10% of the estate or 25% of the estate. Some of you guys really are, hey, I want to distribute it. I love my kids, but I want them to get the benefit of this. You may pass it out over years. You may pass it out at ages. You may pass it out when they complete certain achievements. But the last thing you want to do, for example, is give an 18-year-old $2 or $3 million, unless you want to watch them destroy their life. Or if somebody has addiction issues or alcohol or something else, you want to put in their safeguards so that they're not in a situation where you've just cause them even more harm. And fortunately, we've seen that over and over again. So you have the ability to have control and flexibility by doing that. And I'll put one other one on there underneath that heading before I go to the number 4. Under 3, I'll also say you could put in credit shelter provisions, which means a lot of times we don't have a crystal ball. we don't know if our heirs are going to be in financial disarray when they inherit. In other words, I pass away and I've got $500,000 and I leave it to my child who has creditors and they're being sued or they're going through a nasty divorce or whatever. And I just threw money into it, right? The worst is when they're going through a bankruptcy and the bankruptcy just eats the estate. Or if the state has been providing assistance, like we had this happen on many occasions where a grandparent or somebody is leaving something to a grandchild who has special needs and the state seizes the inheritance because there's no restriction. Because the state's been providing assistance for that individual, and now they want to get paid back. And as soon as you give that individual, you either disqualify them from the state providing them benefits or they take the money. So you got to have what are called credit shelter provisions to make sure that if they are a beneficiary, that asset can't come over into that action. So if somebody's getting sued, for example, the last thing you want to do is they're sitting there about to settle because they only have so much money or they have insurance and the insurance says this is all we got, and boom, all of a sudden you see $1 million. Now, I've lived through this on the other side where somebody inherited at the end of an action and we were able to recover almost the entire inheritance from that action. So I know it's a very real thing because I've seen it in action. But we want to make sure that if we do have individuals that we are leaving things to, that we are treating them in a fair manner and we don't create more issues for them. And that's a huge one. Somebody who has special needs, they didn't ask for that. The last thing we want to do is disqualify them from the benefits and cause them issues because we left them a little chunk of money that's just going to get eaten away anyway. And then they're going to have to go through and reapply. We actually put them in a worse case than when we found them. With a living trust, we can control that. With a will, you cannot. And the last one is, I'm just going to say, a living trust will help you if you're incapacitated. We marry it with a financial power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney. But if you are incapacitated, and unfortunately, fortunately, we live a long time, and sometimes our bodies are outliving our brains, for example. And maybe there's a lot of dementia, things like that, and you may need assistance. The living trust can be triggered to help you, and it works during your lifetime. There's everything from schedule of gifts to make sure you don't have fights within your family. There's pour-over wills. There's direction for burials or cremation. All those things are in documentation that are all within this living trust. The living trust is one provision, but there's lots of other pieces. So when you hear somebody say, I have a living trust, quite often it's a big binder of documents that includes their power of attorneys for financial matters. Everything we do, for example, includes everything. It's the whole sink. The kitchen sink gets thrown in, right? It's the power of attorneys for financial, power of attorneys for medical. It's the HIPAA release. It's the pour-over wills. It's the schedule of gifts. It's even privacy documents, so you never have to show anybody your trust with the declaration of trustee or certification of trust. All these things are included inside of a single document. And those are the 4 surprising reasons that the rich use living trusts. A lot of people don't realize that they are exposing themselves to untold liabilities, their heirs to untold emotional problems, like when everybody's heard of them. And in my family, this is the case. In my partner's family, Clint's family went through the same thing. There's disputes, and it's really tough when there's a dispute in probate for families to get over the emotional harm and the anger and resentment that they feel when siblings are fighting over what mom and dad left or when they're inheriting something. And the rich know how to minimize that. The rich know how to minimize the cost of probate. The rich know how to keep their affairs private. The rich know how to control, even from the grave, to make sure they're not harming somebody. And the rich know that things happen even during your lifetime that they want to cover. And that's why they use those living trusts. And that's why you can too. If you like this video, please like and share it with whoever you think could benefit from it. And as always, if you want a free consultation, click on the link.